I didn't know it did that. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. There are a lot of quirks with the A7IV and other Sony mirrorless cameras that I think are very important to know, but I find that I more often run into people who don't know these things than do. So I thought I'd put this video together because I think it'd be beneficial for a lot of people out there. Alright, let's get into it. Things you didn't know, number 1. Now if you're an action or sports photographer, you're really going to want to pay attention to this one. Did you know that with older Sony mirrorless cameras, now when I say older, I mean prior to the Alpha 1, that if you're shooting in high plus, high, or medium continuous shooting modes, and your aperture was stopped down below f11, that your focus would lock on the first image in your burst, even if you were shooting in continuous autofocus mode. Now there are a few exceptions to this, like the A9 and the A92, which lets you stop down to f16, or the A7R III, which only lets you stop down to f8. But in general, most of the older Sony cameras only let you stop down to f11. I wonder how many photographers have gotten caught by this. I mean, just imagine. Oh, it's a nice sunny day today. I think I'll go take some pictures of Johnny's soccer game. I want a little motion blur though, so I'm not gonna set my shutter speed too fast. I'll just crank the aperture. What the fuck? Why is only the first image in focus? Piece of shit. Well, good news for the A7IV and A1 owners out there, because you can stop all the way down to f22 before running into this limitation. Alright, things you didn't know, number 2. Did you know that when you're in stills mode, the histogram on your camera isn't actually showing you a representation of your RAW files? The histogram is actually being calculated on info based on the JPEG preview that you see on your monitor or in your EVF. Now if you're a RAW shooter, this is a big deal because you may think that you're clipping based on the histogram, but in reality you may actually have more headroom. Things you didn't know, number 3, which is actually related to things you didn't know, number 2. So if you can't trust your histogram as a RAW shooter, what do? Well, the answer is you use your zebras to tell whether you're overexposed or not. Now don't just run off and assume that you should set your zebras to 100. Because did you know that as a RAW shooter, you should be setting your zebra level to 109 plus to take full advantage of your camera's dynamic range? Hey, Future Matt here. While I was editing the footage, I realized that I may have come across a little too harsh on the histograms. I'm not saying the histograms are completely useless and you should never use them. I do think that they're a valuable tool and they'll get you there most of the time. But using zebras in conjunction with your histograms, it just adds another layer of protection against overexposing. So use them together and you'll have the best of both worlds and a pretty solid and nearly bulletproof solution for setting your exposure. Alright, back to the video. Things you didn't know, number 4. Now this one is specific to A7IV and A1 owners. I bet you already knew that the shutter blades in your camera were fragile and that you shouldn't touch them with your fingers. But did you know that Sony recommends not even blowing on them with a blower? In my mind, this makes the shutter when power off feature kind of useless. I mean, let's be real here. We all know that eventually dust will get on the shutter blades. And if there's no practical way to clean it off with touching it or blowing on it, then that means that dust will eventually work its way onto the sensor anyway. So I don't really see the point. I've never had to get my shutter serviced, but from what I hear, it can be a pretty pricey and lengthy process. So I would much rather deal with cleaning my sensor, which I've done, than having to send my camera off to Sony to get the shutter serviced. Is my logic off here? If any of you guys out there are using the shutter when power off feature, drop a comment down below and tell me why. Things you didn't know, number 5. Now this one is specific to A7IV and FX6 users. I love breathing compensation. I think it works amazing, but did you know that not all lenses are compatible with this feature? In fact, at the time of making this video, the list is actually pretty short. It's limited to mostly G Master and G lenses. However, looking at the list of supported lenses for the FX6, I'm assuming that the A7IV's list is going to grow with the next firmware update. But if history has taught us anything, I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for Sony to support third-party lenses. Does anybody remember memory sticks? Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you learned something new. If you did, please consider subscribing. If you didn't, well, I'll get you in the next video. Bye.